Good. So it's my pleasure. So honestly, it's a challenge because we have 25 minutes, and I think we probably have stories for hours. So let's see how that goes. Why don't you start by introducing yourself, so I don't have to, and you can do this a lot better, and then we can get started. Paul.
Hi, thank you. I'm Paul Derbyshire from Bearing Point in the UK. I work in the supply chain operations team. A lot of the work I do involves analytics. My background's very much optimization, primarily from the process industries, but I've transferred a lot of that over the last few years to the world of retail and logistics.
So, hi, I'm Konstantin from Nesto Software. I'm a senior data scientist and responsible, of course, for the data science team and the algorithm to fit properly, but also take care of our key accounts to get actually the technical setup running, which is kind of an exercise sometimes because they don't know what data to send and we don't know how to process it because it sometimes comes in fantastic shapes.
Good afternoon. My name is Arjen Heres. I'm CEO of Decide for AI, a Spanish-based consulting company. We implement Gurobi, so we implement optimization projects at our customers. Prior to that, I used to run a software company called Quintic, one of the founders of that company. We sold it some time ago, so I left the company, and now I'm running this company in Madrid.
Thanks, Ryan. Why don't you just keep the mic?
Okay, yeah.
So I guess we need to start from the beginning, right? When you talk about data, it always feels like the people that have never done a project are like, yeah, it can't be that difficult, and the people that have done 10 projects are like, whoa. Yeah. So there's a lot of, I think lots of lessons learned in do's and don'ts, and maybe we can start with a very, very basic part, which is the role of data and the data platform. It's very broad, I know, but for companies in general, the idea of managing data and treating data not as a side product of the things that you do, but really as a central thing. What is your perspective on the importance of data? Maybe also, based on your experience, and why is this so important?
Oh, it's a rather broad question, but
very broad.
Well, a couple of different perspectives. First of all, implementing an optimization project, an optimization application, means normally that you shift from people doing the work to people doing data management, because you need better data, otherwise your optimization application will simply not function. So the roles of people are changing, which is more like an organizational thing. Sometimes it's simply difficult because you need to explain that the good data needs to be managed, but otherwise, yeah, you get like the previous speaker said, garbage in, and we all know what it means for what will come out. So the roles are changing within the organization because of the implementation of an optimization project. That's one thing. The other thing is that sometimes what we have seen is that data is treated in the wrong way. So you get into an organization, then you say, well, we need data. The first answer is always, oh, we have all our data in SAP. We just give it to you. You run the optimizer, and there we go. Just plug it in, and yeah, that doesn't work. So you explain that you need more than that. The wrong thing that could happen is that then they say, oh, we'll first do the data management project, and then you can come back for the optimization project. And let me give you a very brief example. We once were doing something in a production company, and in CRM and Salesforce, there were the forecast orders, and in SAP, there were the real orders. And well, for optimization purposes, capacity planning, you need both, and you need to know the link between the two. Well, there was no link. In CRM, if the thing was solved, it was solved. And in SAP, there was no link. So we said, well, we need a link. That's what we need. And then we went up to, and there were enterprise architects and CIOs and the data engineers, a long project, Capgemini, busloads of information, data engineers, working for 2 years. And then finally we got back, and well, do you have the link? Well, what link? Oh, no, sorry. So you need to be very focused. What exactly do you need for your optimization application, and where does it come from? So to avoid these kinds of massive data projects that lead to nowhere.
One part from our side. So our customers are mostly restaurant chains. So our core product in the first step is actually providing good forecast for their demand, because this is the main data we use to optimize the schedule in the end. So Kilian just introduced Nesto a few hours ago. This is basically our process of providing a good product to our customers, providing first a good forecast, then optimizing the schedule for the customers. And there, of course, data is crucial. Without any data, our company would lose its USP. So it is for us, it's not only in this way, it's some kind of an essential part, it is integral to our company that the data arrives to us, and it arrives to us at least within an hour delay, best of course in real time, because the restaurant is of course not always running, but some restaurants are actually always open. So you really need to focus, you really need to see, okay, how is the actual performance? Do we need to reschedule? Do we need to refit something? And here, of course, comes the issue. I don't know if you know how many cash register systems are there in Germany. Just make a wild guess.
Software systems?
Software systems. So we have readers now implemented, I think, for 25 different cash register systems only in Germany, and we by far do not have everyone yet. So it is only within restaurants that there are so many different ways on how to register the cash going in, that this of course is, as a data science optimization company, a whole task by itself just to get somehow grasp all you need. So our key result here was, and this is the most important takeaway I would like to give you, is always have a backup solution. Always. It's like if you only have one processing tool, one ETL function to process the data and to receive the data, then you're lost, because there will be some big customer who's like, yeah, we implemented a cash register system in the 90s, here is MS-DOS, good luck.
I think it's interesting to reflect on how times have changed. I think if I think back to maybe 10, 15 years ago, when in the consulting world, companies were coming to us to say, can you help us solve this problem? And then we'd go and get the data. We now have a mix of different people coming to us saying, we have data, what analytics can you do with it? And we have some other clients who come to us and say, we'd like to do some analytics, but the data's a bit flaky. So we're seeing the whole kind of gamut of different things, and what we're having to do with that is say, well, okay, let's start simply. Let's maybe build some proof of concepts for the bits of the, to prove some of the analytics that we can do with it, and also do it in the with the bits of the data that we actually know is accurate, or that we can cleanse and validate quite quickly. I think the thing I always think back to, again, about data quality is a meeting I had with a client towards the end of one of our projects, and it was close to the CEO, C-level exec, and we went through and we explained all of the supply chain concepts, all of the mathematics, and I expected him to ask us questions about that, and he nodded his head all through the talk, and at the end, the only question he asked is, where did you get the data from? And he looked at his CIO, and as long as the CIO nodded that we'd got the right data, he was okay with it. So it just shows that actually, no matter who you're speaking to, particularly, well, even that, at the C level, the focus is on the data, and that was a few years ago. It's even more so now. They may not know the ins and outs of it, but they have a good sense of where the data's, which systems are good, which systems are bad. It's interesting when you reflect on that over the last few years.
Oh, okay. So a lot of things to unpack, right? We had the roles, so people that work with the data, we had sources, responsibilities. So it seems like there's a new engineering task coming with all its different things. I mean, it's not coming, right? It's already there. So why the struggle? I mean, with a restaurant, I understand, right? It's like, okay, so you're running a restaurant, you're not a data engineer. That's very clear. But for any larger company with a proper data backend, whatever that is, at least systems that are supposed to have one, that shouldn't be too difficult. So what is creating this struggle when you try to essentially use data for a new use? That's most of the time what happens, right? Whether it's optimization or something else. So what is it? What makes it so difficult?
I think you've probably hit the nail on the head there. If it's new use, it might be data that you've not used before. Yeah. One of my bosses always used to say to me, if the data's not good, it means that it's never been used, or it's not been used if it was good. if it was being used, it would be good because someone would have addressed the quality. I think one of the things I would say is there's a tendency to, when it comes to looking at the data and addressing some of the data issues, it's to start with the technology. I would always say start with the process and why are people, because it's generally people, why are people subverting the process or not following the process? Why don't people understand the value of doing what they're doing, whether it's measuring an item, weighing an item in the world of logistics before they put it away so that we have that data? Do they not understand the value of that? So focus on the process rather than just focusing on the IT and the technical side of things as well.
Adding to this, raise awareness and acceptance for the idea what you want to do with the data. So when we started, we had the big issue that no one provided the timestamp of the booking. So when the order was made, but only when the table was done, when it was finished. Of course, for workforce allocation, this is pretty useless because you need to know when the service and when the chef has to start the cooking, not when it's over. And you don't know how long the people stay in the restaurant. And this is just explaining and convincing people that this, what you're planning to do is actually valuable for you as a customer. And this is what you learned somewhat the hard way, because in the end, we really send out one-pagers at all of the different stakeholders, at our customers, to really make sure and make clear why do we need this specific type of data in their language and for non-technical users, because otherwise we come to the problem you just mentioned. Well, it's like no one follows the process because they do not see the value in it. And so when explaining it, and this is one of my former lecturers told me that at university, like data science is 90% communication. It's 10% implementing, doing cool code. In the end, 90% it's communication, because if you aren't able to explain your value to the customer in the end, then you have no value.
Maybe just adding one more story to that. We were working for one of the large parcel companies like the DHL. Well, actually, it was the DHL. And we had to optimize the use of those containers in the flights and also the optimizing the routes. And for that, you need the weight of a parcel. And it turned out that all parcels exactly were 1 kilogram. All. Why is that? Because all over the world, people send parcels to Europe. And what they typically do, they have to weigh, but they don't care about it because, what happens in Europe with the parcel, we don't care. And you just put one because it's a fast thing to do. And that's not using.
Quickly change microphones. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
This one's done.
Is it better? Yeah. Okay. So there's a new use of existing data. So that you need to get a new process in place. It's communication. It was not possible to teach all those people all over the world to do something else. So we had to find a solution in Europe. But that's an example of existing data not being used.
Can we dig a little into the roles? I mean, it's like suddenly you have to care about something that you didn't care about too much in the past. It feels like you suddenly realize that things should be in order, or that you should things do differently. So what is, in terms of advice, what is a good strategy here? Because I mean, I can understand companies have systems, some are integrated into their processes, and then it's more like, okay, we now need someone to take care of this. Who does this? Is it? I mean, IT is usually run the infrastructure, make sure people can work. There's no obvious place where you would put this responsibility, or would you?
No, there's not. Typically in the optimization, I'm thinking about planning and optimization projects. Typically, there's not one place where you can put all that responsibility, because quite often business knowledge is involved. So, for instance, optimizing a workforce, quite often the level of productivity is not in SAP. And each person, there are 80% persons, 120% person. The one is more productive than the other. And that data didn't exist before the project. And now suddenly you have this. Well, a team manager should be capable of should do that. It can't be someone in IT or somewhere a data manager. It has to be operational people. So what you have to present them is a very simple user interface where they have the names of the people and you just put the percentage. That's it. And nothing else. And maybe there are 10 other people, operational people, who have to do something else, some other data. So you have to spread it out over different people. It can be one system, in the back end is one system. But there are different people who didn't do that before and now have to be involved in this process of data management.
Also, I want to refer to the one vision you almost used in Gurobi, the new vision to democratize Gurobi. And I think this is democratizing data awareness. The same as you just said, Aryan. It's like there is no one person responsible. There's, of course, one responsible for providing the data to us. But to check whether the data is actually clean, is the right data, you need to take into account and really ask the people on the floor, is like, is this the data you use? Is this what you see? Because we sometimes had like the IT told us, yeah, the data is clean, is perfect. And then we looked together with the restaurant manager on the data and it's like, I'm pretty sure that at 1 a.m. in the morning, we didn't make 2,000 euros of revenue. There could be something wrong in there, but the IT was like, yeah, no problem at all. And was like, okay, they mixed up the time zones. Like the IT doesn't really check. It's like, okay, the numbers sum up over the day, so I don't care. But when checking really in the details in the hourly process, then of course you see the problem. And there, not everyone has to understand everything. This is not possible. It's a so complex world, but everyone needs to be, I think, aware that data needs to be clean and you have your part. And if you know and if you understand your part, you really get the value of it out of it. And then again, increase acceptability of the change process, which is accompanied by these changes which have to be done.
I don't think there's a lot more to say in that one. I think it's everyone's responsibility, really. It's, in the same way that if you're working on a production line, you don't mess with the production line, because it means that you impact the organisation. It's the same with data now. The companies that have the valuable data, the data that's correct and can use that data, are the companies that are going to be successful. So everyone has a role in that.
Okay, thank you. I had my own.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting. So it's a very different level of, and that's essentially the answer to your question earlier, right? So it's the idea that you need a new level of, I'm not sure if democratizing is exactly how I would call it, but it's the idea that you have a responsibility on many shoulders, and it's the fact that you care about something and you make it a vital part, and you also have this validation piece in there. So that you ask people about data, because data for most people is invisible. It gets produced, right? It's somewhere, and then it gets used somewhere else. But this stream, you mentioned ETL. I don't know if everybody's familiar. ETL is extract, transform, load. Back in the days, that used to be the way how you describe data is transformed to do something else. But these, I think nowadays they are called pipelines. Everything is in a data pipeline. And kind of awareness seems to be the best start to make it a part of the management itself. Yeah. Okay. I think we should, have a few more of these cool stories. While we do this, prep your questions. 30 minutes go by very fast. Yeah. So we have some time there. But hey, let's do some story time. Yeah. So it's just some stuff that you can share, because beautiful examples help us to also memorize these things usually much better. You want to start, Paul?
I can think of a couple. I can think back to, well, a couple of hundred probably. But if I think back to when I first started looking at supply chain design and distribution center design, I was much younger then and had more hair. It was the first time I'd ever really looked at product item information, and we were designing a distribution center, and it was for a stationary distributor. And we went through designing, obviously, the distribution center, how big, how high, all that kind of stuff. And we came across a box of micro pens in the data that were supposedly a kilometer long. Obviously, you don't design the DC based on that, but that was quite an awakening for me to say, well, okay, this data isn't correct. And ever since then, I've lived with that one. I think the other story I would say is that data doesn't always give you the answer. Sorry to say that. I think if I think back to one of the, again, this is in the world of logistics, we were looking at delivery schedules, and we had one driver who would not follow the optimum schedule that was laid out. And we went through the data and we couldn't understand why. We looked at the congestion, this, that, and the other, and it turned out they were delivering to pubs, bars, restaurants, and he'd never deliver in the right order. And the reason was he always wanted to finish his delivery at a specific bar or pub because they gave him a free dinner, and that was never included in the data. It was only when we actually did a ride on and followed him for the day that he said, "Oh yeah, go here for my dinner," and that's. So it's not always in the data. Sometimes you need the practical side of things as well.
Good one.
Adding to this, it's sometimes data behaves weirdly because humans produce data. So we had an issue once that for a customer, the revenue didn't flow in for specific times in the week. There was just like it was dinner time, but there wasn't any data coming in. We were like, why the heck is that? So there was a pattern, but it was not a real visible pattern. So it was not clear. It wasn't matching with any other data we had. And then after a few weeks, a month even, figured out there is this one certain employee who figured out how to turn off the cache system. Yeah. And we're like, how is this even possible? At the first step, and we don't talk about this. But these are the points, because even the CEO could not find the answer. Even the cache system was like, we don't know, perhaps it's internet issues or something like that. Nothing worked out, and yeah, in the end they tracked it down. And this is like the most important part. Data does not just is being produced by some sensors. It's a large share of data has some human interaction, and this is, I love this pub example. This is fantastic because it is like the human preferences would do not consider. It's like, I do not produce data. I'm a logistics guy. I drive my truck. I do not drive data. And the same is for the restaurant employees. Like, I'm not here to produce data. I'm here to produce pizza. So I don't care about the rest. And yeah, this is some funny stuff you really encounter, and you're like, okay, I had never guessed that this is possible, but now we have the solution.
Yeah, maybe talking about stories about data. Once we had a project at a rail company, and they were looking at how to plan and to schedule all the train drivers, and in no time we were able to save 20-25% of the labor cost, and that turned out to be a big surprise for management. How is it possible? Because yeah, we are not able to reduce the workforce with 20-25%. But out of the data that we analyzed and that we rescheduled, turned out that there was a sort of agreement between the planners and the drivers, because if within 3 weeks prior to your shift you would change your shift, you got an additional 50% pay. So there was a sort of agreement between virtually all of the drivers and the planners. Well, you know, if we change me and then put me in the evening, and then later you put me back in the morning because I want to work in the morning, would do that within the 3 weeks period. Well, then you get a nice bottle of wine, and so in no time in the proof of concept we already said, how is it possible? We can save 20-25% of labor cost, and these are the nice, maybe for other persons not so nice things if you analyze the data. That.
Good. All right. So I have to confess, I've learned most from these stories, right? Because it gives you a level of awareness for something. And I think people produce data, yeah, which is kind of strange because that's not the job. Yeah, that's one part. And of course, it's incentive systems in many ways, right? There is a reason to produce the data or not to produce data. And sometimes there are magic or weird ways how this can happen. Beautiful. So, questions from your side. Have you thought about a few good ones? Do we have a second microphone? Is it working again? Okay. All right. Who wants to go first?
Thanks, guys. Super interesting. Any words of advice on where OR should sit in an organization? You know, if it doesn't already, does it sit with the data team? Does it sit with the BI team?
Who do you want to answer? Or everybody?
Anybody in the panel, yeah. Well, words of advice of where should establish an OR strategy, for example. Thanks.
That is a tricky question. Yeah, thank you. I think, isn't it what they call in football a hospital pass? No, I think I'm minded to say that should it really sit with the analytics team? Should it really sit with the BI team? Should it not really sit with the business side of things? So, you know, maybe elements of it sit within sales, elements maybe sit with it in the supply chain side of things. I think if there's too much focus on it just being seen as a technical solution, actually, does it really deliver what the people who are in the operation, be it sales, marketing, or within the supply chain, are actually after. So when I've delivered not just optimization, it's actually, I wouldn't say we try to avoid talking to the IT team, but the people we really want to speak to are the supply chain director, the supply chain teams, or the sales and marketing team, whoever's doing it, and it's them that should own it, because they really understand the day-to-day constraints, and they're the ones that really make it live. So I would say it should sit with maybe away from the IT team. They support it, but the other elements of the business are the ones that gives it the shape and the direction and make sure that the process lives.
I think not much to add. So from our side, it's like when thinking about our customers, the IT team, if it is existing at all, then it's really only a small part of the company. It's just like because they have these regulations that they have to document, of course, their revenues for taxes and all of this. But in the end, data is like this all of data management and all what comes along with it is such a crossing field because it affects each and every department in an ecosystem. And so I would say you need people who are able to really get a glimpse of what the other departments are doing and how to get all of the streams together to get a kind of broad understanding. You do not need the in-depth details about each and any data point. This is not the way to do, but you need people who are able to have a broad understanding on how data interacts and how these different streams, because there is a reason most often, that an ecosystem collects different types of data. There was sometimes, or there still is a use for the data. So you need people who are able to really to get this transfer learning well done. In my opinion, do not only need techies to do so, just people who have good understanding of processes and how ecosystems work.
Yeah, and maybe very briefly, we always say, well, you have to do two things with data. First of all, automate it as much as possible, logically, so that no one has to touch anything, and embed it in the work process. Because if someone has to do something with data without knowing what the value for the rest of our organization is, then it's very hard to organize it. So embed it in the work process.
Stuff. All right. Another question, or comment, or remark, or you want to join the discussion?
Just said something that might worry me. Maybe in a few years' time, will any of us be here? Will we all be cut out of the process, and will it all be fully automated, and there'll be no need for a conference? I don't. But
there are experiments, right? When they try to have robots have a discussion or something like this, it's getting better and it's getting weird, but it's already possible. Yeah.
I attended that.
Enjoy the time you have.
Yeah. And robots don't enjoy a view, so I think there's some space left. Hey, we still have a few minutes. Did I see a hand, or are you all more in the let's get to the drinks mood? No problem. Okay, good. But last but not least, that's one of the questions that I sent to you. Like we already heard a very good advice, and if there's some more like lessons learned, something that you can really say out of experience and can share with the people before we call it a day, that would be appreciated.
Check the data. Check the data.
Next.
And address the process.
Okay.
Get all stakeholders on board.
Yeah.
Really important. Do not overlook the HR department, because they always have a say to any part of data. So really, do not look at the diagram of the company and make sure you have every head of every edge. Just talk to them once at least.
Yeah, maybe in optimization projects, we call it efficient information or efficient data. Focus only on the data you really need, and don't get into big data projects or something. Just make clear why you need the data and that you need the data, and that's efficient data, and not more, not less.
Cool. All right. I mean, it's a huge topic, right? But I thought it's definitely so helpful to get this distill out of your experience, and I think it fits perfectly into the context of this session. Good. Then I would say we'll call it a day. We'll call it a session. Thank you all so much for being here. Wait. So logistics, we have now 15 minutes to go downstairs. The stairs are, you can make it in 15 minutes, but the idea is that at 5:45, our, what's the official, Senior Vice President Sales, which is Juan Carlos, which is my boss, does the closing remarks. So to kind of end the day, and Juan Carlos is always, he always tries to bring in a deeper message. So that is probably something that will close the day in a nice way. Again, thank you very much. Hopefully this was not the end, but the start of a few more discussions later with a few refreshments. See you later. And thank you again for your time.